This is the Sensei Podcast, where we help you make sense of investments and financial markets, where we help you make sensible financial choices. I am your host, Ndwati Karanja. One of the lecturers in college once told us a very funny story. He said that there was a group of people from a county in Kenya that went on a benchmarking trip to South America. And the purpose of that trip was to figure out how that South American city had set up a very efficient bus system. However, when they got there, they found that that South American city was using plans that had actually been developed for a Kenyan city back in the 1970s. I found that to be quite hilarious. However, that incident seemed to highlight the weaknesses of benchmarking trips, especially when it comes to government. In the past, it has appeared as a way of those government officials getting those travel allowances. Benchmarking is not a negative thing, and it's not something that you say when you want to appear smart at work. Benchmarking is actually a very important concept in investment management. And in this episode, we're going to talk about how to benchmark your investments. We're going to talk about the purposes of a benchmark. We're going to talk about how to use one. And then finally, we're going to wrap up by talking about how to choose a benchmark for the particular investment that you are looking at. Let us start with the first one. The first purpose of a benchmark is to measure the performance of your investment against. For example, you might say that you're a great boxer, and you indeed might be a great boxer when you compare yourself to the other people at your local gym. However, when you compare yourself to Mike Tyson, you will probably find out that you are not such a great boxer. And that is the purpose of a benchmark. It is a way of actually knowing how well your investment is doing. There are certain benchmarks that you can compare your investment against, and the investment seems to be doing very well. However, if you compare it to a different one, you'll find that your investment is actually not doing that well. So therefore, that is the first purpose of a benchmark, to gauge how well your investment is doing. The next purpose of a benchmark, it is to set your expectations about the kind of returns you can hope to get from your investment. When it comes to investments, you find that their returns are mean reverting. What does this mean? It means that over a long period of time, all investments that are of a particular type usually tend to make returns that are equal to the average of that group. So you can expect that most of your investments in a particular type of investment, for example, let's say if you are investing in shares, they are going to do as well as an average of that group. By having this idea of a benchmark in your mind, you can know exactly how much you can hope to get out of an investment over a long period of time. So remember those two things. First of all, the benchmark is to help you measure the performance of your investment. And second, it is to help you set accurate expectations of what you can make from your investment. And with those purposes in mind, let us talk about how you can use a benchmark. So how do you use a benchmark? First of all, it follows from the first purpose of a benchmark, which is to measure the performance of your investment. You use a benchmark to gauge how well the person who is managing your investment is doing. The fact is, typically when someone is managing your investment, for example, you're investing through a unit trust, you're going to be paying them quite a significant amount of money in terms of the fees that you pay annually. And therefore, if you're going to be paying that amount of money for those services, you better be getting your money's worth. And that is one of the ways that you use the benchmark. You use it to determine whether the person who is managing your investment is doing the work for you. You do not want to be paying for less than average returns. First of all, it is a way of you determining whether someone who is managing your investment is actually doing a good job. In addition to that, a benchmark is also an indication of how they are managing your investment. And the reason I say this is because often, for example, an investment manager might set for themselves a benchmark, and then over time, they keep exceeding that benchmark by a lot. And you might think that that is a good thing. However, what that means is that the way that they're managing the investment is not comparable to the benchmark. For example, let's say it is a money market fund and they choose a treasury bill as their benchmark. If they keep exceeding that, the returns of a treasury bill, you will then know that the way that they are investing that money is not as safe as a treasury bill. And so it's one way of getting red flags about an investment. Whenever they are exceeding their benchmark by a huge margin, or they are underperforming it by a huge margin, you find that the way that that investment is being managed in the back end is not as you are expecting, and you need to be watching out for it. So it is a way of you measuring the performance of the investment manager. And in addition to that, it is a way of you knowing exactly how your investment is being managed. I just made a reference to a treasury bill as a way of benchmarking our money market fund. And that is going to bring us to the third segment, which is how to choose a benchmark for your investment. The way you choose a benchmark for your investment is, first of all, you need to understand the risks that are involved in your investment. Let me go back to that example of a treasury bill and a money market fund. A money market fund is meant to be something that is very safe. And when you put in your money there, you are not expecting to make a lot of returns. However, you expect that your money is going to be safe. So when you look around for other investments that are comparable to, that are going to guarantee you that kind of safety, you find that treasury bills are going to do the exact same thing. Therefore, when you are investing in a money market fund, then the natural benchmark for that fund would be a treasury bill. And the returns of a treasury bill are available on the Central Bank of Kenya's website. So that is how you pick your benchmark. You try and look for something else that is standard, that comes very close to the type of investment that you have, and then you will pick that as a benchmark. Some of the typical benchmarks are, if you're investing in something that is meant to be very safe and it's going to give you just a reasonable interest rate, then you pick a treasury bill. If on the other hand, you have something that is going to give you a constant amount of money over a long period of time, then you're likely to choose a 5-year bond, the returns on a 5-year bond as your benchmark. On the other hand, if you have something where you put in your money and it's likely to grow over a long period of time, then you will choose the stock market index as your benchmark. And the reason I've covered these three benchmarks, treasury bills, 5-year bonds, and stock market indexes, is because regardless of the type of investment that you are getting in, you can use these three to create a benchmark for those investments. However, that would take a bit of time, and it depends on the kind of investment that you have, and you will need to talk to someone who is a professional to help you create the perfect benchmark for that unusual investment that you have. However, by just understanding these three types, you are in a position to be able to create a comparable benchmark for any type of investment. Let me wrap up. So we've learned, first of all, the purpose of a benchmark, which is to measure the performance of your investment and also to set your expectations of what you're going to be making from that investment over a long period of time. The second thing we talked about was how to use a benchmark. And here it was to know whether the investment manager is doing a good job. In addition to that, understanding how exactly they are managing your investment in the back end. Finally, the way you choose your investment benchmark is by finding something that is comparable in risk to the investment that you are getting into. And the three main ones you need to keep in mind are treasury bills, 5-year bonds, and stock market indexes. In closing, every time you are being sold an investment, it needs to come with a benchmark. They need to tell you what the returns and the risk of that investment are going to be comparable to. If someone is selling you an investment and they're not giving you a benchmark, then that is definitely a red flag for you to take time and pause and look into it, and maybe you might avoid losing money. This has been the Sensei Podcast. We release new episodes on Wednesdays and Fridays. Please subscribe and leave a comment on your favorite podcast provider. I am Ndwati Karanja. Until next time.